Good morning. Hope you're having a good Sunday, whether it's morning or whatever time of day it is. We're at the Sokukoji Monastery Zendo. It's unusual to be here these days, but here we are. So the title of the talk, when you want to push the top back on that, so it doesn't take off the top. There, thank you. So the title of the talk is the three don'ts. That's DON''T. I think I gave a talk like this maybe a few years ago called the Three Donuts, and I'm sure that got a lot of hits. But the three don'ts, and you all know what these are. You've heard me talk about it for quite a while, off and on. That is don't believe. Don't believe. Belief is not helpful to the spiritual path. It may be helpful to hunting or building a skyscraper. And it certainly is helpful to securing or making the self-centeredness feel secure. So don't investigate here. I'm just fine accomplishing things and getting credit and having a credential. And I'm even fine being criticized because at least I know I'm somebody. I'm the one who made a mistake, sometimes called shame. It's the opposite of pride. You may have a lot of pride. You may have a lot of shame. You may prefer one over the other. I would say don't prefer anything. At the same time, don't believe it. And also, don't disbelieve it. And of course, the third one, the most difficult of the three, is don't look away. And how do you train yourself to not look away? Observe. Whatever's moving, just observe. Don't join it. Don't reject it. Don't dismiss it. There's a lot of words that will fit that in that area, which are all kind of movement words, movements in the mind, movement in space. But if you do move away from something, be aware of it. You don't have to necessarily correct that. It's a very subtle area, and only through meditating, doing sitting meditation year after year after year, will you realize that you can actually get up off your cushion and go get a drink of water without being wrong, without being lazy, without any judgment pursuing you down the hallway out of the Zendo or out of the meditation room. Awareness is only about awareness. Liberate yourself. And how do you do that? You look at the jail, you look at the bars, you look at the confinement of the self, and you won't see that in 3 weeks, 3 months, even 3 years. I'd be quite astonished. Nothing to gain, nothing to lose, nothing to separate from. And of course, it's very difficult to just make yourself stop believing, or make yourself start believing, or make yourself not look away. Excuse me. This is why it's so important to take your seat in front of something that's not moving. A wall is good. Hold still, sit very symmetrical. Find the one thing you have some say-so about that actually is actually there, the body. You have some say-so about that. You have very little say-so about the mind, because there isn't anyone. So sit down, hold still, sit symmetrically, left over right. This is a good mudra or hand position. You can do this also, but this is a little more casual. Make it kind of, you could say, invented. Take on a very symmetrical position and just observe and begin to see the incredible, fantastic, undiscoverable symmetry of the world. It's called the Great Perfection, and you have to see it. You can read Longchenpa all day long, and kind of feed off from that kind of thing. Read it a little bit, and then put the damn thing down and sit in front of the wall for a few hours. See it for yourself. He's gone. He's gone. real dawn. So the way in which you work with these three donuts is just by seeing them. You just notice the way. I'll give you a little experiment you can do. The next time you're sitting in a room by yourself, particularly, it could be with others, but sitting on the couch, sitting in your chair, sitting on your cushion, just notice the way you don't question anything. You don't question the wall, the house, the building. You don't question the body. You just assume this is you. Look closely. I'm not saying this isn't here. I'm not saying there aren't nerve endings, but it is not you. You can't find an identity here. This is what they say when the teaching talks about the five skandhas. Look in the sense of form, no self there. Sense of feeling, no feeling there, or no self there. Perception, really not anyone there. Some kind of a perceiving quality, but not an identity. And of course, in the thought process, which is a hyper vigilant about being threatened, paranoia. No self there, no self in the six sense fields that are objects. There's a lot going on there, but it's all dependently arisen, and there's no authority anywhere. Even though we would like that, because we want somebody to be in charge, like mom and dad. And even mom and dad should be in charge only as much as necessary. Don't interfere with your child's karma. Try to make anybody into somebody else, including yourself. Find out who you are, as I say over and over again. And of course, how is this done? By being actually noticing that you actually believe you are a body. As long as you think this is you, you're going to be feel safe and feel scared. It kind of alternates. You'll feel really safe, really pretty good. Hey, this isn't bad. Sun's out. Not too bad. And then another time, because causes and conditions tend to rotate this way and that way and this way and that way, then you could become incredibly frightened because there's this me feeling, this identity of a someone somewhere, just because there's something happening with the eyes, with all the different sense fields. Pardon me. Look closely. How do we do that? You might have to do this a lot, but we've been doing just the opposite for centuries and centuries. Even that's kind of an understatement. There isn't any time you haven't been here. And when I say you, I'm talking about what this is, because you're not separate from that. But it needs to be realized. We use concepts, ideas, considerations about the concepts that point to the nature of reality. Most of the materialistic community, whether it's scientific materialism, psychological materialism, materialism, and spiritual materialism, want proof, some kind of proof. And of course, the way that meditators look for it is experience, not interested. The experience of Kensho actually covers up your awakening. It might help you a little bit because it might get you back to the cushion more and more and more to see if you can get that to come back again, that feeling of being one with everything. You guys know what I'm talking about. Or maybe you don't. But it's not an experience. What this is, when you understand it, see it, grok it, perceive it, once that happens, it's not an occurrence. It's not an occurrence any more than opening up a jar or a box. Somewhat experiential, but the main thing is it's open. We don't continually go back to the experience of it. We see it. We see it. No proof. If you see it, you have no interest in proving it to anyone. You don't say, you don't even tell somebody about your wonderful looking at the nature of reality and seeing your face everywhere. Unless you're a teacher, and then you may try that out every now and then. See if anybody, it helps someone. Everywhere I look, I see myself. I've said that. I used to say it a lot because I thought that would be helpful, but I don't say it so much anymore because everybody's starting to look like somebody else. Nothing lasts. It's not an experience. That's why it doesn't matter. Once you see it, it doesn't matter what happens. It's not like you're indifferent. No, you're very much about saving all beings. You see that other people who are tied up in knots about who they are and they're suffering and torturing themselves and torturing others, you want to help them, but you need to respect their confusion before you can help them. And how do you do that? You respect your own confusion. Quit trying to shape up. This is not the Marine Corps. As they say, shape up or ship out. I don't say that. See what it is. See deeply what it is. All evidence is partial. You might have evidence for something, but since it is partial, it's also dependently arisen. It's also relative truth, and for a while it works. But the world is only flat for a while. The actual understanding that that can arise by not grasping belief, not refusing disbelief, and not shutting down or distracting ourselves, ignorance. What will show up is what this actually is. And it is completely lacking in otherness. I lied. It's got a little bit of otherness, but not much. It's just enough for you to have dessert tomorrow afternoon. Just enough otherness. That's called humor. Yes.
When you were talking earlier about you see that you can get up for a drink of water from meditation and it's not laziness, it's not bad. Does the tension have to be there in order to see that? The tension of thinking there's a right and wrong to be able to see that contrast?
Yes, you have to look at the tension without shutting down on it, ignorance, without explaining it or justifying it or saying it's okay for me to do this, passion, or without going to war with yourself or trying to discipline yourself so you never get up and so you can tell your friend or your neighbor or your teacher, I managed to stay there all day. I'm not saying you shouldn't say that. Of course you should. You could say, I block set all day today and didn't move. That's not what I'm talking about. Communication is just that. It's just this happened, that happened, then this happened. It's when it becomes some kind of result or some kind of a very subtle credential. It's a credential, but it's kind of under the pile of newspapers in the garage. So you have it, but you're not going to let anybody know that you're using it as a credential more.
I'm just wondering too if we can go too far into that where, I can just get up and move whenever.
That's passion. That's passion. That's actually being creative in a way that protects your activity and justifies or validates it. You can actually get up from the cushion and go function, go to the bathroom, get something to eat. Even in block sitting, sometimes when I talked about block sitting, I said, you could watch, pardon my throat clearing. As long as you're watching what moves. The idea, of course, is to sit as still as possible to create as strong a contrast between what you have a say-so about and what you don't have a say-so about, which is your thought process. Sit down, hold still. But if you need to get up and move, either through not feeling so good, your knee hurts, you're bored, your intention is already the same. You have the intention to train the mind, and that means you should respect what happens. So that means you could get up and go out. Sometime when we first started here in this monastery, this temple, years ago, people would get irritated if we're all sitting in here and somebody gets up and leaves. Okay. So in ancient times, 30 years ago, it was ancient times, you couldn't leave. You couldn't leave until, or someone would yell at you. Jikijitsu would refer to you as a criminal or something. Who knows? It's just that the control modality is just, it's just a misunderstanding. It's a huge misunderstanding of discipline. Discipline is not about controlling anything. It is about observing forms, and you observe the form, and your form is to sit and hold still. And when the thoughts come and go, you observe the thoughts coming and going. No comment. Don't believe it, don't disbelieve it, don't look away. You just observe the motion. You observe the motion. You observe the motion. When your body is aching, you might not cave in right away to it. You might look at it for a moment and realize that you need to get up. There wouldn't even be that comment. You would just get up. And that also is motion. Sometimes meditation teachers differentiate between the motion of the thoughts and the motion of the body. These are not two different things. And you can actually train with the motion of the body. This is why I say when you're going to do block sitting, create the form and then watch what you do. See if you can sit there for 4 hours. See if. It's not a success story. You may get up after an hour, 45 minutes. You may go do something else. But the original intention is to train your mind to see clearly, and the instruction is coming from, if you have a teacher, coming from the teacher, is to sit down, hold still, watch what moves. So that's your instruction. And what may be moving is the body getting up and going to the kitchen. That's also awareness practice, and it is a particularly powerful awareness practice if there's very little extra comment on anything. In other words, I shouldn't be doing this, but I need to go. I should just go. Pardon me. More about that?
I'm also wondering about what is the practice of not taking a position?
What is the practice if not taking a position?
What is the practice of not taking a position? So when we're talking about this, it's not to say don't move, but it's also not do whatever you want. So what is the actual practice?
Did I say do whatever you want?
That's what I'm saying. It's not those extremes.
No, the other way I say it is don't do anything unless you have to. So in other words, don't think unless you have to, but you're going to have to think. And don't move unless you have to, but you're going to have to go to the bathroom. So you would notice that. In other words, you would make it a complete awareness practice, not only movement of the mind, but movement of the body forms. This won't look like a success story. It might look more like a failure story for a while. But this is why it's necessary to have some kind of form to observe the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the teaching person, what is being taught, and the community that supports each other in this awareness practice. More?
When you're bowing, there's a question from William Murray's daughter, Melanie, aka Moodles.
I know Moodles.
She asks, what is karma?
I can't remember how old Moodles is. Can you? Is Moodles 7 or 8? Somewhere in that area. So karma is a Sanskrit word that refers to, that freely translates as action. It is often used as like your karma. It's your karma to be a girl or be a boy or be really good at sports, or it's your karma to constantly say that the causes and conditions, in other words, this causes something. It's like your mom and dad kind of caused you, so it's your karma to be you, because of their karma to be them, and so on. So it keeps going back further and further. Most of the world, Moodles, grasps on just a bit of the karma. This did that. You're the blame for this, or I'm able to do this because of that. And they don't realize that very cause and effect situation is very deep. It goes way, way back before you and I even got here. The cause and effect has been happening and happening and happening. That's why there were dinosaurs. At least we think there were. Something left a bunch of bones. So cause and effect, basically. I hope that's helpful to you. Don't do anything with it. Just look at it.
Question from Koku.
Who is it from?
Koku,
Koku. Okay, go ahead, Koku.
how do you not look away when you are in a lot of physical pain?
you notice that you look away. It's always about, so you don't do it unless you have to. And if you're in physical pain, you might have to ignore that, but you're aware of the ignoring. And if, insofar as you can, if you're in a lot of physical pain, and I can speak from experience, I've been in some of that. If you can, just look at it. And it can be excruciating to do that. But but there's something that is authentic about not even being with the pain. It's not about being with the pain. It's not about accepting the pain, which is passion. It's not about rebelling against the pain, which is aggression. And it's not about shutting down on the pain, which is opioids, however you want to say it. Shutting it off, closing it off. And also, this doesn't mean that when you go to the dentist, you can't get some Novocaine. We're not going to extremes about it. But we're just saying, if you're in extreme pain of some kind that doesn't seem to have an off switch somewhere, then insofar as you can, receive the pain. But if you can't receive the pain of you personally, or this person or that person, if their karma or their difficulty, they can't do that just because somebody said so, then just be genuine. Just whatever's happening, keep it as simple as possible, as few elaborations as possible. More.
The second part of this question, is it similar to how you say with sitting for as long as you can, then going away and doing something else and then coming back?
Sokuzan, could you please repeat the questions that are being asked in Zendo, because I at least can't hear them.
So you're going to have to come up closer and say the question, because I'm not going to repeat it.
Is it similar to how you say?
Can you hear? You still can't hear. Is it similar?
To how you say with sitting
Come on.
for as long as you can, then going away and doing something else and then coming back?
No. Do you hear that, Bill?
Yes,
Good. You hear me?
yes.
Good.
But louder would be better.
We'll try. We're socially distanced here, and so we're weighing our risks of louder is better, closer is badder, those kind of things. Oh, turn up the volume. Have another microphone. We have a technician here who just came through the window. Dropped out of the sky.
Should we be somewhere else then?
When you answer your questions, if you can keep them fairly simple, then I can repeat them. If they're really long, I just get lost in space. I don't remember much.
Sokuzan Bauer.
Yes, goes on.
You say.
Loud, please, loud.
Okay. You say do not.
Can't you? You're not any louder than that.
You say do not. Can you hear that?
No.
You guys?
Go ahead. You say do not. You say do not. Go ahead. I'll repeat it for you.
Push, pull, or ignore.
Push, pull, or ignore. I say do not push, pull, or ignore. I do. But you might not be able to help that. You might say, well, I'm not going to push, pull, or ignore, but I can't help but be against that. I can't help but feel anger against that. But the anger that you're feeling that's coming up is not necessarily you pushing. It's just coming out of causes and conditions. You could call it what Moodles was asking about. Call it your karma. You can't stop having emotions and feelings. Don't fight with yourself. Be genuine. More?
Yeah. With ignorance, the very nature of it is you can't see it. Even if you make the intention to not ignore, you don't even know you're ignoring.
If you eventually will. If you continue to receive and stop spitting things out and knocking things down. If you stop passion and aggression, eventually by working with those and taking the energy away from those by not fueling that, then eventually you'll begin to see the way you've been shutting things down. It takes a while. Go ahead, please. She's done. She was
How can we know that we have an intention if the action isn't showing up that's consistent with it?
I think it just takes a while. How can we know that we have an intention if the action that shows up is inconsistent with the intention? I just think it's a matter of why. It just takes a while, because you'll notice there's a mini conclusion that comes in there that explains that to us. You notice that? That's how you're able to ask that question. You don't see the conclusion part of what your question. So you might think that questions are about getting answers, but they're actually about seeing your own conclusions. I just help you with that. Yes.
Are there actions that are inconsistent with the intention to awaken?
Yeah. If there are actions that you piled so much plus and minus judgment and on, even involuntarily, that you can't see it. This is why it takes so much mind training. This is why people who are highly intelligent, brilliant people that I can't cross swords with, that are still immersed in confusion and will die without knowing who they are, because they've crunched into something that they think is true, mainly themselves and how smart they are. Go ahead. Further questions, since we're in the question? Hakaran, did you have a question?
Yes, but I don't know how it fits in the context.
Doesn't
but
matter.
My question
Doesn't matter.
was about gratitude and
Yes.
how, and being genuine with gratitude, like how
Okay.
does it fit?
I'm ready. And thank you. How was that? Gratitude is not about you. It's not about you producing. It's not something you produce. Gratitude is something you receive. Just give everything your attention. Be grateful. Be grateful for this incredible world showing up every morning, every night, in front of your eyes, in front of the mirror. Human beings who come in your direction who are incredibly in intense pain, that are acting angry, that are incredibly confused. Don't blame them. Listen to Moodles. She's asking the right questions. What is karma?
Sokuzan,
Yes, go ahead, please.
relating to don't believe, don't disbelieve, and don't ignore. When I'm experiencing a lot of negativity, sometimes I want to jump to gratitude and say, am I trying to push it away then, the negativity?
Probably not. So we work with it. We have to work with it where we're at. And so wanting to jump to gratitude, you have a lot of negativity, be grateful to everyone. It's just a practice that's done. It's taught in Buddhism. Everyone has been your mother. There isn't anyone anyone that hasn't had that kind of a dynamic with you. You might say, well, I had a terrible time with my mother. So it might not work. The metaphor might not work so well. But it's just basically saying that they're fundamentally aren't separate beings. They're just this incredible display of phenomena that appears as separation. So just receive. Other questions, if you have them? Come on, you guys, help me with this. Go ahead, Don.
Don Dowling, is not remembering a form of ignoring?
Yeah, but it's dependent on circumstances, on causes and conditions. So you may remember, you may not. I wouldn't be too concerned with it. If you think you need to remember something, then start repeating it. Don just came out of a 10-day solitary retreat, and he just forgot why he went in. So that's why he's asking that question. So who was going to ask a question a moment ago?
Sure.
Chisho, go ahead.
Kishavami, I understand what you mean by question being around a conclusion that we already had. How do we work with this question and answer format to help us get past that?
You don't have to get past it. There isn't anything else. The elseness is part of the delusion, the thinking there's something else, thinking there's somewhere to get. This is, if it's polished too much, if it's worked with too much without being understood, it becomes a spiritual materialism. Trying to use spiritual techniques to be someone else. As my teacher said, very simply, very directly, and very succinctly, be genuine. Be genuine. Just be who you are. Be who you are. And any confusion that's coming, don't do anything with it. Just watch it, observe it, receive that. So you don't have to, you're doing, as far as I'm concerned, since I'm functioning as your teacher, your mentor, your guide, whatever word you want to use, I'm saying you're fine. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep studying, keep practicing, keep asking questions, keep interacting with Sangha, Buddha, Dharma Sangha, an incredible structure, the teaching person, what is being taught, and the community of people who are together supporting each other in order to see this incredible truth of no separation, no otherness. Anything you can think of that looks like two things, that's delusion. If it looks like this and that, it's delusion. And if they look like they're the same thing, that's delusion. Same and different.
Akaran bowing.
Akaran.
If they look like the same, you broke up there.
It's same. It's not just me saying this. It's like a sandokai, the equality of sameness and difference. It's the same and it's different, and it shows up in our consciousness. It looks like the consciousness is one thing, the awareness, the thinking process, and the body is something else. They're also not the same, and they're not different. But one has to realize, you have to realize that. You have to sit down, hold still, and watch. You may not have to become a Buddhist. You may not need to receive vows. That would be your business. But we only have so much time. We only have so much time. Death comes without warning. So, and then the whole situation goes back into the elements. Go ahead, Akaram.
You say over and over, just receive. But is that enough to root out the causes that create suffering for myself? I always feel I want to do more.
Sit more. Want to do more of all the things that I refer to or talk about. That's the one that probably needs to be stronger with most people. Maybe not everyone, but sit down, hold still, watch what moves. Do a lot of that so that you can get to know yourself on a deeper and deeper level. There are lots of layers of consciousness. This human realm is a very thin candy shell. There's lots more. There's a lot more than this. And when I say more, I'm not saying, if you would say, well, how much? Well, okay, 1,562 billion candy shells. But we're only seeing one of them. And some of them aren't made of candy. So, but it's necessary to see this one, what this is, before we can explore much deeper. I mean, we can explore deeper, but it's very difficult to be a sojourner in an area that is totally dark, and even the light that's there is confusing.
When something novel, when something new arises in consciousness.
When something new arises in consciousness.
How can you explore without grasping?
How can you explore without grasping? Just look at it. And if you see yourself grasping, the awareness of grasping starts to cut into the area where the grasping gets its fuel from. Where does it get its fuel? From hope, thinking you're onto something. You're not, or thinking it's something that's dangerous. It's not. I'm not. Don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that fire isn't dangerous or poison isn't dangerous, but I'm saying that grasping here. Just watch the grasping. There's two kinds of grasping or three kinds of grasping. There's this kind of grasping, passion, this kind of grasping, aggression, and this kind of grasping, or what problem? More? That's good. That's good. Keep going.
It seems like even in our protector chants, we ask for protection against certain appearances.
We do. We certainly. We ask for all beings to be happy. We pray for all beings. Go ahead.
So do we particularly need protection from anything that arises in our?
You don't need protection, but you ask for protection. You don't need, but you ask for protection. You participate in the realm in which you're in. You're in the realm of desire. You can't just suddenly be a Buddha and be some kind of a special woman who no longer needs or wants or has a credential of not needing. When I say you don't need anything, I'm not talking about the current credential of being free of grasping. I'm saying you're very, very aware of grasping. And you're not concerned whether you grasp or don't grasp. And why? Why? I'll answer that for you. There isn't anyone. The grasping it gets very intense, especially when the self-centeredness is threatened. In other words, the belief in the self-centeredness. But if you see who this is, you're liberated. There isn't anything can catch you, can chase you, can stop you, can start you. The whole control mechanism has collapsed, and you're liberated. And where are you liberated from? I don't know. Where are you liberated to? I don't know. There isn't anything else. The elseness is gone. More?
Not yet.
Further questions? Juju.
Question from Shane Thompson.
But Shane, are you still alive? Why don't I ever hear from you? Go ahead, Shane.
Are masks, quarantines, and social distancing the new normal or a temporary phenomenon?
Everything's temporary. Everything is temporary. So just probably a good idea. You don't want to avoid the situation. So you would work with it however it shows up in your neighborhood, your community, your however. But yeah, everything's temporary. Even Buddhism is temporary. The teachings can go away. That's why we have lineages. That's why we have warm hand to warm hand. If you understand this, anything I happen to understand, which puts me in a place where I'm talking to others about or responding to questions, comes from the Buddha. Not something I discovered. It comes from my teachers. Not something they discovered. Lineage. Warm hand to warm hand, all the way. Unless you're in Tibet, it might be cold hand.
You say, recently in a talk you said, don't look for the light, look at the darkness. If anything that we see is apparent or light, how can we look at dark?
Well, if there's light, then look at the light. But if you're having difficulty and it seems dark, then you might have to look at that. What I'm trying to, I'm not saying you shouldn't look at the light or look on the lighter side, to put it simply, of course. But if you're having a struggle with something, then rather than try to cover it up with some kind of artificial heat lamp, go into the darkness, because that's where the light is in the darkness. That's why when Rinpoche says be genuine, he's saying you need to look at your garbage. Like Kobun said when someone asked him, how would you, just spontaneously someone said, how would you define a Sangha, the Buddhist community? And he says, the garbage heap. And why is he saying that? Not to be negative. He said it's a lot of very, very difficult emotions and feelings and all getting together and trying to see, is there a jewel in this garbage heap, as it is sometimes referred to? More?
In Sandokai, it talks about how the light and the dark aren't different, but on the path are relatively, how are they distinct?
One's bright and one's not. So we can, the polarity thing, we can go around and around and around about that. It actually is something that someone has to see. And if you see this, you'll be tongue-tied. If you see what this is, unless you do what I do, which is lie constantly. That's the only way I can point at the truth, is just tell one lie after another one. It's all relative truth. You can't see the truth, you can't point to it, but you are who you are, body-mind complex, life, your room, the sky, you're not separate from anything. The Buddha you're looking for, you already are. As trying to think of his name, Indian teacher, Punja, who said, give up the search. I wouldn't say give up the search, but I would say you might want to look at your search. What are you searching for? We have a few minutes left. If there's further, go ahead. Didn't you?
Question from Susan Olcott in Traverse City.
Susan?
Can you explain how Buddhism is temporary?
Yeah, because the Buddha was a living being, and the Buddhas down through the centuries are living beings. And teachers and other spiritual traditions, they live and they die, and there has to be a living Buddha. It wouldn't be necessarily be called Buddhism, but without that, then it's a dark age. So it's just temporary in that way, in that it arises. The teaching is not temporary, but the teaching can, without a teacher, you can't. You just continue to get wound up in whatever is happening in your culture and so on. Doesn't mean it won't come back or arise with if there is a living Buddha or a living being who is awake, who is able to transmit that to others. And if there are people around who aren't so wound up in their spiritual materialism or their scientific or material materialism, that they are open to that. You can't teach without students.
Ty Lowing, I have a question.
Go ahead, Tayo.
I've taken your teachings of losing the war and just receiving seriously over the last several years. And I've gotten some people in my life that, because I kept accommodating, I have people in my life that have unhealthy relational dynamics that put me in some, dangerous situations where I might lose my livelihood and stuff like that. So my question is how do we just receive and lose the war while still having healthy boundaries and keeping us and the people we care for safe?
Well, you're just basically describing samsara. I would just say as much mind training as you can do, sit still so that the clarity about your own confusion is stronger than the confusion out in the world, so you don't project your own lack of clarity, called confusion, onto others. So I'm not blaming you for anything. I'm just saying clarify this situation so you see more clearly the confusion out in front of you, rather than thinking that the confusion in front of you is them rather than your projection. Being able to see the difference in that is very important. It takes some time. And I understand, I know a little bit about your situation. I know that's been difficult, but some of that is just karma. It's just, the color of your hair, the shape of your nose, your particular ability of skills or lack thereof and whatever. And all of the other cause and effect, very simple, materialistic kind of things that we talk about that are just coming and going. So insofar as you can receive that, meddle as little as possible, try to clarify your own confusion, clarify your own difficulty, be responsible, the ability to respond to whatever is happening rather than blame others, even though somebody else is actually causing your strife or your difficulty or your confusion or your problems. Insofar as you can, be responsible for that. There's teachings in Buddhism. One of them is drive all blames into one. Anything that's happening, your fault. But you can't really do that unless you have some clarity about the lack of a personal identity. Very difficult to do that if you still believe that you're somebody who's been put upon, who's been cheated, who's been robbed, who's been lied to, who. That's what leads people to. That's why that we have the court system we have. It's just cut and dried. You do something wrong, we don't say, well, let's see, how were you treated when you were 13? You know, what was your last life like? There's no going into that. I'm not saying you can't do that, but you have to find somebody who has the understanding to be able to see into distant realms, sometimes called past lives, because those things show up here. Those things are showing up here. I know they're showing up here, and I'm pretty sure they're showing up out there. And I would say less is better, rather than trying to use that to grind axes. More about that, Tayo?
Yes. So I guess I just realized that losing the war, I led a lot of unhealthy people in my life, and now I'm creating a boundary where I'm actually making it harder for people to come into our program and harder to come in closer. So I guess I'm finding that boundary between just receiving and then, and protecting myself.
Well, since I don't know, I have an idea what you're talking about, but when I say lose the war, I'm not saying drop all your walls and boundaries. I didn't say that. That's a misunderstanding. When I say lose the war, I'm talking about the tension in your own mind. See that do it there. I'm not talking about lose the war out here and let people come and sleep on your back porch. So probably should have a personal interview around that if you wish. It's up to you. But I don't mean to lose the war to lose in a way that's is ignoring the different kinds of challenges or threats or something like that. So there again, I'm not necessarily blaming you for your saying you don't understand. It's probably because I don't know how to explain it thoroughly so that you do understand. Further questions?
Michael Bowing. Is the war you're talking about not necessarily material or physical? Michael Bowing.
Yes, it's not.
What is this war? It's not physical.
It's the tension in ourselves that we think we're right, and we think that somebody else is wrong, and we go to war with that. They're wrong. They shouldn't have done that. They should straighten up. They shouldn't act this way. So that's a simple way of putting it. I think it takes on lots of different nuances that are very personal. And I would say, insofar as you can, first you have to see that there is a war going on. And when I say lose it, I'm saying just don't take any to continue to use the war metaphor. Don't keep sending troops to the front lines, with your ideas and how you could win and how that shouldn't have happened and they shouldn't have done that and I should have had more artillery over here and I didn't send enough have enough protection. I need more tanks over here. All of that kind of conversation. This is what they're doing. Look at our society. People are going. It's getting so difficult that people that ordinarily wouldn't really go to war are starting to starting to prepare themselves for a war, for probably a civil war. And it's there's nothing wrong with it. It's a huge misunderstanding. If you go to right and wrong, next thing you know, you'll be locking and loading. And it's not that you shouldn't. I'm not saying that if somebody comes and threatens your life, you probably need to protect yourself or your your friends or relatives or family or whatever. Of course, you can't go against what's happened, the force, the weight of karma that is coming your direction. I'm not saying be a pushover, and just go into some kind of idealism. Well, I'm gonna. Sokuzan said lose the war. I didn't say run away. I didn't say let somebody shoot you.
Tayo bowing. I guess where it gets confusing for me is when I'm trying to lose the war, but then something shows up as protect yourself. And then I'm thinking, well, who am I to protect? Lose the war, and then I continue on from there. So I guess I'm confused as to how to lose the war and still have a sense of self-preservation.
So what seems to be missing, and I could be wrong about this, but I think more sitting practice. Sit down, hold still, because if you keep thinking the war is out in the world, not that some of it isn't, but if you keep putting it out there, then you miss all the energy, the negative energy that's happening here, because it's easier. If someone's out here fighting, all of you probably can resonate a little bit with it. If somebody's having difficulty fighting, you can feel your own anger or aggression, either for this side or for that side, come up. Sometimes it's called patriotism. Sometimes it's called nationalism. Sometimes it's called, well, I can go on and on. I know you see what I'm saying, but you don't have to do any of that. You just don't have to do any of that. So rather than be the one who's going to go to war with this or stop that or prevent this, you can hold your seat. But you can't hold your seat unless you've been practicing holding your seat, holding your seat, holding your seat. Get to the wall. Get to the wall. Sit down. Do it. And not 15, 20 minutes a day. Longer, much longer. Do a lot of it, please. Please do that. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to follow me. I'm not going anywhere. But you might want to do this before the body-mind goes back into the elements, which it's going to do sooner or later. Find out who you are. Goes on.
When something appears and there is a feeling of tension that seems associated with it, is that indicative of going to war?
No. Feeling of tension is just a feeling of tension. It's the attribution. If you abandon the tension, the actual feeling of tension for what's causing it, you've just gone to war. Even though, and this is the hard part, even though that thing that you're pointing at did actually participate in the karmic situation of cause and effect, but it's a shallow understanding of it, and it's shallow because ego wants it shallow so that ego can continue to assume that the dependent origination that brought up the appearance of an identity called me is somehow justified in fighting with that, when actually the whole structure, the me feeling, what happened, the tension that came up and everything is a part of an incredibly gigantic matrix of cause and effect called dependent origination. And because of the nature of consciousness, if you can work with it in this way to see what this is, eventually you stop shrinking up into a me that has an axe to grind. It's not that the me doesn't keep looking for it, but it becomes unreal. And so therefore your ego is still hanging around because the body-mind complex came into this human realm, this realm of desire, and it's not going to stop. It's dependently arisen. But who you actually are, you can liberate yourself from that. More?
That's divine. What does it look like to lose the war in the mind?
Much more comfortable. No axe to grind. Axes are presented to you all the time. Sometimes they're called students. More, Jessica?
how does one lose the war in the mind?
Just watch. You know, it's going to be a little bit different with everyone because just that kind of tension, that kind of warfare looks different to each person, depending on the karma, the causes and conditions that arise as your particular chemistry set. So the important thing to do is just watch the war. You don't have to fuel the war, make it stronger. You don't have to go to war with the war, which I often say, don't go to war with the war. Just be there. It's like the image that I often use, which I think is a metaphor, is you're in the theater. Stay in the front row. Don't leave the theater. Ignore ignorance. Don't jump on stage, which could be passion or it could be aggression. Don't interact. This doesn't mean don't go have a sandwich. It doesn't mean talk to the next door neighbor over the back fence about somebody's dog that barks all night. I think we had something like that here last night, didn't we? Somebody's dog barking all night, keeping other people awake. It's the dog's fault. It's not the owner. The dog is the one that barked. So the idea there is just to watch the energy of it come and go. You can do it. Make friends with yourself, is the way the Vidyadhara would say. Look at the negativity instead of trying to blame somebody for the negativity. Even if they did it, this is why it's so damn difficult, is because even if you can see the cause of that person, your mother maybe, or the dog causing that, you're the one having the negativity. And there isn't anyone. And the negativity is having the negativity. And you don't need to go to war with that. It's pretty good news. But you have to see it. I can sit here as some dumb old man and tell you stuff. A simple-minded old person getting simpler all the time. Train your mind. Find out who you are. If you have any kind of difficulty with anything, the one thing I can tell you pretty generally, I'm probably going to be pretty close to this. You're probably not sitting enough. Sit down, hold still, and watch the movement. I wouldn't be here had I not done a little bit of that. Further questions?
Michael Bowie, isn't one of the things about going to war is our ignorance about the war?
Yes.
We don't even know we want to go to war?
Yes.
And what do we do about that?
Sit a lot. Meditate a lot. Meditate. Sit down. I'll show you how. You sit, you hold very still. You can sit in a chair. You can sit on a duck if you can find one that won't waddle around. I don't care what you sit on, but sit down. Find a place to sit that's stable. Hold still. And discipline yourself. What is discipline? Watching how crazy you are. It's not about tightening up. It's not about shrinking down into a soldier or a military person. It's about watching, hold very still, and watch what continues to ramp up and go this way and go that way and blame this and blame that and assume this and assume that and make up this story and that story. Please don't interfere with it. Just sit in the front row and watch the stage play. Watch the actors come and go and come and go. Eventually they start to get worn out. This doesn't mean the theater is going to disappear. It just might get quite large. What do we do next? I'm not in charge. I would dedicate the merit, okay.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Dio san shi shifu. Shi san bu samo ko san. Oko ja ho free worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down that the light protects Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering.